Partnership is, making, in our case, the world a little bit better, have confidence in each other. And it's a kind of a family affair.
When we have somebody on site, we've already got all of that intellectual property kind of pre-placed. We have all of the right approvals and justifications in place for them to immediately access that information and immediately resolve their issue and get their aircraft flying again.
So the biggest operational benefit is that in our case, we are able to solve problems within an hour. And we started worldwide with 10 weeks, right? So in our case, it's now in the Netherlands, it's in an hour, and we can solve problems in Europe within a day.
Welcome back to the Critical Care podcast from Shephard Studio, in partnership with Collins Aerospace, exploring the future of military aviation sustainment. In our last episode, we visited Heidelberg, a Collins Sustainment Centre shaping readiness across Europe. Today, we head to the Netherlands, where sustainment takes an entirely different shape, one defined by presence, proximity, and partnership. At Woensdrecht Air Base, Collins engineers aren't just visiting support staff, they're embedded with the Royal Netherlands Air Force. Working alongside maintainers, commanders, and logisticians, they're shaping how sustainment works, not just in systems, but in relationships. We begin with Colonel Ted Meeuwsen, Head of Sustainment for the Royal Netherlands Air Force. He explains how a traditional contractor relationship evolved into a strategic partnership.
Well, the GoCo model in our case evolved to real partnership. And that meant, in our case, that the long-term sustainability of everything was more or less guaranteed. We could more or less rely on each other as well. So for me, as a center of excellence and dealing with a lot of countries and a lot of questions, I always have a kind of autonomy in everything that we are doing over here, because I always have a backup, in this case by Collins. So that's really excellent.
This change didn't happen overnight, and it came in response to real operational pressure.
Well, we started just with, let's say, the fundamental on-site collaboration. But again, also this evolves in a more partnership relation in which we can, let's say, have a kind of a follow-on development on everything that we thought about, also sustainment-wise. So what I mean with that is that, we started with a kind of a workshop in which we were able to guarantee the sustainment of, in our case, the helmet. But now we are more and more able to pinpoint the exact, let's call it, flaws or failures in a helmet, so that the go over time is more or less shortened also, because we are much more aware of what's really happening in the whole sustainment of, in this case, the helmet. So the biggest operational benefit is that in our case, we are able to solve problems within an hour. And we started worldwide with 10 weeks, right? So in our case, it's now in the Netherlands, it's in an hour, and we can solve problems in Europe within a day. I mean, the whole thing to fix something, refurbish or refit or whatsoever, you can compress it to in an hour time frame. We have a product, and then a courier goes to the squadron and delivers the goods. In our case, so that's really excellent. So we started as a workshop, just doing stuff, and now we evolved to a high-end pinpoint shop in which we can solve almost everything.
The result? A cultural shift that's reframed how problems are tackled and how fast they're solved. At Woensdrecht Air Base, Collins Aerospace has embedded service engineers who bring technical reachback directly to the flight line. This isn't about reactive support, it's real-time problem solving at the point of need. This is Chris Norris, the Director of Avionics Military Services Program Management from Collins Aerospace and leads the embedded support team in the Netherlands.
Yeah, so from an on-site perspective, we generally, or we have options to put our service engineering folks on site with our customers, right? So what that really does is provides immediate reach back for our customer into the Collins kind of global infrastructure and knowledge, really reduces their downtime and increases their availability. The biggest thing we find by putting service engineering on site is that time that it takes to reach back into the information that the customer needs to be able to solve whatever issue they have. Especially globally, when you think through the world as it is today from a global trade perspective, one of the longest lead time items for our customers is getting access to the knowledge and the intellectual property they need from Collins to be able to fix their assets. When we have somebody on site, we've already got all of that intellectual property kind of pre-placed. We have all of the right approvals and justifications in place for them to immediately access that information and immediately resolve their issue and get their aircraft flying again.
It's not just about presence, it's about impact. Engineers on site aren't waiting on calls. They're walking the hangars, reviewing systems, and acting on insight before an issue escalates.
We have solutions and scenarios where we have engineers on site with our customers. They're embedded, say, in a depot where they can help provide oversight of the repair process that's happening, real-time access to reach back and intellectual property, all the way to engineers who we've hired directly out of the services who are embedded with our customers and go out on missions with our customers. We can really offer our customers whatever they need to make their mission successful, from telephone reachback call all the way to engineers physically deploying with units to make sure that not only are the aircraft ready when they need to go, but the aircraft remain operational during the mission.
That flexibility, the ability to adapt to each scenario, airframe and urgency, redefines sustainment in practice. At the heart of the sustainment model in the Netherlands is something that is hard to measure, but easy to recognise: trust. What began as a workshop-level support arrangement has become a dynamic, embedded collaboration. Today, Collins Aerospace engineers are not just visitors to Royal Netherlands Air Force bases, they are part of the daily rhythm, working shoulder to shoulder with operators and technicians.
Well, in our case, it was a two-stage rocket, more or less, because we started from this side, which is Soesterberg. But Soesterberg is not an airbase. Our main operating air bases are in Leeuwarden and at Volkel. So what we did is we made it possible for the Collins employee to actually go to the squadrons and do the work over there as well. And that was ideal and fantastic, because then you've got a Collins representative on site listening to the problems that the pilots addressed. And in that case, we could solve problems immediately at that specific airbase, or we could do it later here in Soesterberg. So it has to do with also shortening the sustainment cycle, more or less. And just because you put a face to the name as well, so in case there is another problem, let's say in about 2 or 3 months, people know, okay, let's call the Collins representative and let's see what we can do about it. Over here, it's very obvious. I mean, what we do over here is not different if you compare it to a regular pilot fit facility where you actually measure the pilot and whatsoever. And we refit and refurbish over here as an extra. We do dynamic testing as well. But as an add-on, the Collins representative is just one of our colleagues who is actually also at the airbase, at squadron level, talking to the pilots and solving the problems there on site as well. And that's excellent.
This is how availability is protected, not with service level metrics, but with shared urgency. When the engineer is already on base, speaking the same language and sitting at the same table, the response is measured in hours, not days. And that changes everything, from readiness to resilience.
It's a tremendous effort what we did, because what you see now is that it forms a kind of web now, because all the other allied countries are now aware of what's possible with the mutual ambition what Collins and the Royal Netherlands Air Force had together. So in fact, all those air forces are now more or less customers of ours. And we're doing more or less the same for them as we do for our own Air Force. In a way, they can rely on, let's say, sustainment issues there are, and there's no necessity to, send stuff over to the States and have a kind of a lead-on time of, let's say, 10 weeks or 5 weeks or whatsoever. So for them, it was an eye-opener, a game-changing approach as well, that the sustainment and the shortening of the sustainment cycle is also possible for them. And it helps if there are several you mentioned Heidelberg whatsoever within NATO now, especially within Europe. And now, with all geopolitical thing that's going on, it's very important that we can rely on each other. So what Collins does together with the Royal Netherlands Air Force is just offer those allied air forces our resources and expertise. I mean, so they are invited to come over to Soesterberg and do all the stuff what we do with our own pilots, and also on site do stuff the same as what we are doing at squadron level. What I mean is that we copied the same approach what we are doing for the Netherlands for Norway, Denmark, or other countries. And the thing is that over the last couple of years, we grow in our experience level. So if there are new F-35 countries, for instance, we can give them good advice and show them the pitfalls that what we learned from. There's one pilot readiness center in Europe. We are a little proud of it as well. And we offer our services to all the allied countries.
Michael Nelson is Director of Military Service Operations at Collins Aerospace. He sees the Royal Netherlands Air Force model not just as a success, but as a blueprint.
So the benefits of on-site support are specifically for the customer would be quicker turnaround, quicker cycle time of the repair. It gives them the ability to mitigate MICAP situations where their mission, to keep them mission capable. There's a huge benefit by locating the service capability or service repair capability within region or within country. For example, which you'll probably get to, the Netherlands stand up there. That's a good example of where I think we're putting the support, service repair support in a region where we can get units that need repair turned quicker and back to the end user in a more timely fashion. It allows us to avoid some of those obstacles that we run into when we have to go back and forth internationally, like our domestic U.S., and you've got challenges with import-export, as you know, other global trade implications that can slow the process down significantly. To me, the benefits far outweigh the negatives of on-site support. A MICAP situation would be where they have like an aircraft on ground or worst case ship in port that can't go because of a unit that broke for them or part of a system that they've had to send in to us to get repaired and back to them so they're mission capable. In my mind, as a service leader, it's the worst situation I can have because I'm holding up their ability to protect our allies and us without that equipment.
That shift from centralized logistics to co-located capability changes more than timelines. It changes relationships. It embeds industry where it's most needed, right next to the warfighter.
I think the sustainment and what it looks like is relative to the customer demand, the environment, and then what it comes down to is the governmental funding, right? The budgets. They kind of dictate what we can do from a sustainment standpoint, in my mind. So if I look back when I started with Collins, we had service centers in a lot of regions. And over time, we've reduced those based on demand, based on funding, etc. And now it's like we're kind of going back that way, but a little different, because I think the approach now is probably more creative, where before it was just put up brick and mortar and add capacity, add, people, etc. Our approach is more of a partnership with our customers that I think in the long term probably gives us better ability to sustain things longer because there's that joint investment. As that is evolved, the warfighter is looking for that quick response. How do you keep me mission ready all the time? Putting it as close to those regions where those items are used is probably a different thought process than before.
For Colonel Ted Meeuwsen, the future of sustainment isn't just about speed, it's about sovereignty. As technology accelerates and operational pressure mounts, he sees localized support not as a luxury, but a necessity.
It will become more and more important especially if you can do it with local industry or as Collins does, have a representative in country, because there's a necessity to fix things in a much speedier way than because of the situation. I mean, so we can't afford it to send stuff over to any other country and say, okay, let's wait 10 weeks to solve issues, or if there are sustainment issues or whatsoever, you have to solve it in country. So also the follow-on development of parts or whatsoever with local industry, with representatives in country will be becoming more and more important. And especially also because the technology grows. I mean, the influence of new technology, giant leaps are being made right now. Looking at AI, virtual reality, augmented reality, eye tracking, gaze tracking, sensor technology, whatsoever. So it will become the footprint that we and that mutual ambition that we had with Collins will be a kind of a blueprint or footprint for the past with other companies.
From KPIs to co-location, the Royal Netherlands Air Force model shows what's possible when sustainment is treated as a partnership, not a procurement line item.
So what I mean is a partnership is completely different if you compare to just a customer-manufacturer relationship. It's much more than that. You're almost family. And the nice thing nowadays is that a lot of ecosystems are, especially also in the Netherlands, are now almost everywhere. But still, from my point of view, a lot of ecosystems are still a customer-manufacturer relationship, buying stuff and maybe for a diminished price, but that's it. But that's no partnership. Partnership is, making, in our case, the world a little bit better, have confidence in each other, and also have the joy for each other if something is very successful. That's the difference, I guess. And in our case, also the success of what we have with Collins. Because for them, it was quite risky, right? Being a kind of a subcontractor, put on a contract directly with the Royal Netherlands Air Force. But, especially on this part, I mean, the collaboration is excellent because, it's a kind of a family affair then. Not only the large industrial partners, but also small businesses or whatsoever will be of the utmost importance in near future. Because technology is still challenging us like whatsoever. And we have to keep up with it as a human being. So new insights, new technology, let's call it new brains. So new insights are so important to be ahead of all those challenges. So again, I guess as MOD, in our case, the Royal Netherlands Air Force will be more and more dependent on industry and small businesses. Because, a couple of years ago, we never thought that drones would have such a huge impact, right? And now drones are very important. So you need a drone industry. So, we have to speed up the innovation cycle. We have to speed up all the research cycle. So the collaboration with civil parties and partners will be more and more important.
It's a model rooted in trust, speed, and shared accountability. And it's already showing results. Next time on the Critical Care podcast, we explore the technologies shaping next generation sustainment, from predictive maintenance and condition-based logistics to AI-powered diagnostics. Thanks for listening.